Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the H3X Podcast with Dave Miller and Mark Gearing, where we discuss the head, heart, and hands of the multiplying church and our leaders. We're happen to be in Toronto with a couple of guys from Western Mexico. I said New Mexico because that's where I'm from. Totally not. Western Kansas. Mark can edit it. A couple of guys from Western Kansas that are doing some work in Garden City, and Ben Clark, one of our core partners in Oklahoma City as well. And we are on a vision trip to Toronto, and we've just been discussing between ourselves about what the next right thing looks like. What is it like when you're in ministry? And we've been talking a lot, Mark, about macro and micro, but what happens when you get down into the micro and it gets hard, and you've got to figure out how to just keep going, and the importance of learning the habit and the challenge of just do the next right thing to keep going. So we thought we'd talk about that today.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in the van, so this is exciting. We've been talking before we hit record. I feel like I'm like with you guys in the van. So excited to jump into this with you. Man, when you said that, Andy, that resonates, that idea of the next right thing. And that's coming out of you guys, Kendall, Andy, you guys doing the work there in Kansas in engaging unreached peoples, but also just as you guys have been developing that grit and that mentality just in your vocation as you've been doing work. Could you guys just unpack what you have been doing and how you've gotten to that conversation around grit?
Yeah, so we've been engaging the diaspora, particularly refugees in our community. And there's only like 450. There's only 100 in our people group, the Afghans, and been at it for a year. And most of them kind of heard what they need to hear, and really no response. And so a lot of the team is just like, oh, they're just kind of falling off a little bit. So we're kind of starting to connect with people that are staying engaged and that have been engaged in Garden City, and just wondering, well, how can we come alongside those people that have been staying engaged that aren't a part of our team, and then how can we get them to do some cross-pollinating onto us, and us onto them to gain that momentum. And so it's really, just asking, well, what's the next right thing? A good example's going to their prayer group and just starting a relationship with them, and paying attention when my wife says, hey, don't be worried about your agenda.
Paying attention to your wife is always the best next right thing.
Just go and just pray, which is kind of the theme, so it's like a 30-minute drive from the country out on the ranch to Garden City. And people will say, well, what are you going to do? Well, I really don't know until I get there. I'm just going to do the next right thing. And God just keeps being faithful and showing us what to do every time we go.
And I think that's a helpful two pieces you're bringing together there, both in what you do on the ranch and then in this work. And maybe you can connect those together, guys, because you've been at it for a year or so, as you were just saying. And when you're starting out in that, like you've got all the things, right? Here's what we should be doing. Let's go try this. And then after a while, it's like you hit that point where you've got to dig in and be committed and show up, even if you're not always sure what to do next or what's going to happen next. And that's in both of those areas. Can you talk about that? How have you been growing in that grit piece through that?
Yeah, like I was telling you before, it's just, in ranching, you have seasons where it's really, really hard. I mean, there's snow on the ground and you're feeding the cattle every day. You're losing money. It's cold. You're tired. You're not getting any sleep.
Ranching sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, it's terrific. Yeah. Yeah. And that's when we come across here, like, oh, I've always wanted to be a rancher. like you have no idea what you're talking about.
So it's the perfect grit developer, in other words.
Yeah, it really is. And but it's, you know, you walk out the door, you say, okay, which cow needs fed now in the next hour? And you take some hay over there, or which water tank needs broke? And you go there and you do that for sometimes 5 or 6 months. With sometimes even no result, but it's part of who you are. It's your identity. So you just continue to do it.
Here's what I love about you guys. A lot of times, especially when Mark and I are talking, I'm in Oklahoma City, which is small compared to New York, but you know, Mark's in one of the most vast opportunities for lostness that the world has to offer in one central location. And here you guys are out in western Kansas, where you're driving 30 minutes off the ranch to get into town. And here's what I love about it is that it's about barriers. It's about whether you're in an urban context or you're in a very rural context, both us and you guys are going after lostness, and the diaspora is where you are, right? Even in the middle of nowhere, and recognizing that it doesn't really matter where you live, going after lostness is going to be difficult. There's barriers you're going to have to solve, and that concept of just do the next right thing has everything to do with keeping going, right? Because I think a lot of times people think about mission, they're going to go, oh yeah, we got to go to this big urban context, but you guys are a great example of how right now, even though you're not in a place where everybody necessarily wants to go, you're making use of who you are and where you are for the kingdom, and you're getting gritty in that, even though it's not, you know, can I use the word sexy on our podcast, Mark? Is that okay if I say it that way?
It's on there now.
Yeah, it is on there now, even though it's not the place that everybody wants to be, right? And you're saying it's not all it's cracked up to be, but you're doing the next right thing because you believe that God wants to use you where you are. You know, I think that's a great example. And I'm glad you guys are on here as farmers and ranchers in the middle of western Kansas that are modeling this kingdom work ethic, you know? Yeah, so super encouraged.
And Kendall, that grit has developed for you. You were talking before we even hit record some of how God has really established that in you from an identity standpoint, that even as it's gotten tough, you've already been tested in some of that area. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, while we were talking, I looked up the definition of grit.
Did you use perplexity?
I did not.
Oh,
no, yeah,
okay.
Dave has told me about perplexity, but I haven't started using it yet. But yeah, it really just, courage was a big word that he used, and courage has kind of been a big word in my life. Just, even if there is fear, it involves the heart, which really is just identity. Like even in the midst of fear or uncertainty, like it's just a part of who you are, and you're going into it. And so I think with the stuff that we're doing, we really don't always have a lot of answers or even know what to do a lot of times, but we're just doing it because that's just who we are. Yeah, we don't know what things may look like in a year, 2 years, 3 years time, but just trusting the Lord with the day at hand. And yeah, something that I was saying, before we hit record is just, I think God has been so faithful and good to reward us with a lot of joy during this season too, and just trusting Him day by day. And a verse that I'm really reminded of is Psalm 16:11, where it says, "In your presence is fullness of joy." So yeah, in the grittiness and the doing the next right thing, God's been really good to show us more of Him.
We like identity conversations. It's good.
I do too.
What do you guys, as you've been committed to that grittiness, what are some of the things that you are by faith? Because I mean, you're saying like you don't always know what to do, but there are some things that you do have conviction about that even if we're not seeing results right now, this is what we need to be doing. And on this podcast, we'll use the term high value activities to describe that idea. So what are some of those high value activities like, hey, we're going to show up, we're going to do some of these same things because it's the key step to move things forward, whether or not we're seeing fruit.
Yeah, I think one of the things is really just keeping the gospel at the front and center, and just going out and sharing the gospel, and not getting like, yeah, we have a people group focus, but we're starting to just go out. Well, where are the other people at? Let's go there for a day and go share the gospel with a few of them and just see what happens. So the gospel is still at the front and center. That's one thing.
Yeah, and we've talked about rhythms of prayer and fasting as well. So that's been a big one. Yeah, and with the gospeling piece that Andy was talking about, we really try to make it a priority each time we meet with somebody to sow the gospel in some capacity. And that may not look like an entire 3-circle presentation, but that's definitely a goal that we have right now.
We're going to put Ben in on the conversation. He's sit over here quiet, but he's hanging out with us as we're in Toronto. And I think, Mark, one of the things that has really come to the light while we've been visiting and just building relationships and meeting the laborers who are on the ground leading out here is a statistic that stuck out to me is 75% of Toronto is now first or second generation immigrant. And that's something that has accelerated in the last 10 years, but really in the last 5 years because of some of the immigration policies that the government has intentionally put into place to bring people in. So here we are sitting at a city, right? 75% are not originally from Canada. And it's hard. And there's so much diversity and so much in both language and in culture and religion and all those kind of things that it's really, a challenge, right? To look at those things. Ben's kind of been up here with us too, as he's kind of thinking through it. And your focus been in Oklahoma City. How has your consistently, because you've been with us now for what, 6 years? Yeah, working at this with us for 6 years now. How has this idea of the next right thing and this grittiness been key to you actually still being on the, in the car with us, still going after, still chasing after No Place Left?
Right. Well, even as I'm listening to you guys answer, just thinking about grittiness and like why I'm still here after 6 years. Because after 6 years, a lot of times it feels like nothing's happened. That can be feels that way. I know it's not true, but it can be discouraging. And so it's like, why bother continuing on? It feels like not much is happening. For me, what comes to mind is in John, after Jesus said 55,000, they keep following him around, and then finally he tells them, eat my flesh, drink my blood, and then the crowds go away, and he looks at the 12 and says, are you going to go away too? And right. Peter says, where else are we going to go? You have the words of eternal life. And at the end of the day, sometimes I feel like I have no idea where we're going, don't know why we're doing this, but at the end of the day, where else am I going to go?
Yeah.
Following Jesus, that's it. There is nothing else in life that's worth doing. So whether that's in Oklahoma City or Toronto, or whether the place is really hard, really easy, if I don't know why I'm doing it, if anything, I just know Jesus is the only way, and following him is, there's nothing else for me. So I have to keep pressing on because there isn't any other option.
Man, I think it's a good word. Like when we come down to it and we go, okay, Mark, regardless of the context that we're in, what's the next right thing? The answer is obey Jesus. Like that's the best next right thing. What does Jesus tell me to do in the season that I'm in? Right? And obey him. That'll keep you going. I don't know about you, Mark. That'll keep me going.
Yep, that's right. One other observation I'll make, guys, you're in a car together right now. You're in it together. You've got some, we'll use the term withness going on, right? Where you're co-laboring in a different field, but with the same task. How, you guys could answer from different contexts, whether it's Kansas or Ben or Dave or where you're at in Toronto, but what are you guys seeing with the withness piece and how that's developing your grittiness?
Earlier, a few years ago, I learned pretty quickly how hard it is. And I did that semester abroad down in Mexico, and I was by myself there trying to do a lot of stuff. And I learned pretty quickly just how difficult it actually is to do it by yourself. And I'm a very, very independent American that thinks I can just figure it out on my own. But the reality is that without brothers and sisters in Christ to do it with, I won't get that far. And so we need each other, really.
Yeah, I think we'll just follow along with that idea of joy too. Like Kendall said, this season has been really just a season of joy. And even just getting to ride around in a car with Dave and Ben and getting to know them, their hearts, and seeing how much they love the Lord, and hearing Ben talk about how committed he is even just that just brings me a lot of joy. And so I just think, how can I experience the joy of the Lord with other people? And I think one thing that gives me the most joy is telling people about Jesus. And so getting to do that together and try to figure out how to do that with other people that I don't know, besides just these guys, is really unique and joyful.
I love that you guys are doing that together. There's something for me, from my perspective, that I get reaffirmed in my identity when I do it with people, and especially shoulder to shoulder in the harvest or some sort of disciple making or the church planting piece, all different aspects of it. But especially that piece when I'm at the edge, and I do it with others, I'm reaffirmed, and the grittiness of pressing through whether or not there's results, that rubs off like that. I'm bolstered in that, and I double back down on, like, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing when I'm doing that with some other guys.
My favorite part is you're teaching me how to be a better charismatic, Mark. I appreciate it.
That's the unfortunate outcome of witness, Dave.
It's nothing. I was telling these guys this morning, I was like, all the ways that you stretched me and pulled me, and all the foolish things that I said when we first met each other. And then I was like, oh, I get what Mark's saying now. And then exactly what you did to me earlier when you're like, oh yeah, I'm learning grittiness from 2 Corinthians. I was telling them a story about a time whenever you were like, well, this is what Jesus did. And then I was like, okay, you know how to speak my language now. I'm good. But in all reality, that witness is part of what is made the gritty part of our relationship for me and you been so helpful, is that we, for whatever reason, just keep hanging out, and over time we rub off on each other. And I think the best ways. Part of the reason why we even came up here to Toronto is just to say, how are the ways in which we can just contribute to such a large strategic city in lostness in North America, in particular. And I think we're asking that same question. What's the best next right thing for us to do? If this opportunity is here, how do we build relationships? How do we get to know some people who are on the ground? And then how do we take steps to partner with them in a way that's going to be beneficial to move things forward here? And I think, kind of a consensus that we have is the next right thing for Toronto is there's a lot of spiritual warfare that's going on. There's a lot of idolatry being brought into this city because of false religions from all around the world, and they're just propping up their idols all over the city. And the need for prayer walking and the next right thing. And so I kind of want to wrap it up to say, hey, while we're here in Toronto, what we're seeing, what we're understanding is that if you have a heart for, or you've ever thought about Toronto, the need for laborers to be up here to begin to do spiritual warfare, prayer walking, gospeling, just finding the places and the real core locations here in Toronto, and begin to engage in asking the Lord to change this city and to bring hearts and raise up leaders is a huge need. And so if you've ever wondered, man, where's somewhere in North America that there is a huge need? New York is huge. Toronto is huge, right? And I think the next right thing for us to really see no place left among the diaspora, especially in North America, you can't bypass Toronto. I mean, we got to talk about it. We got to have some people that are going to come up here and give their lives to it.
Thanks for listening, for watching. If this content has been helpful for you, please take a minute to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us to get this content out there farther, to serve Jesus, grow his kingdom, and accomplish the Great Commission until there is no place left. Much love to you guys. See you next time.